Welcome to 'Cause We're Nerds, the podcast that covers trends and new releases in comics, movies, video games, board games, and much more. I'm your host, Zach, and with me is my co-host and cousin, Caleb.
Hey everyone.
What news and important information do we have for you today? Find out on this week's episode of 'Cause We're Nerds. I'm back, baby. Back in black.
Welcome back, Zach, to, my 25th episode.
Yeah, I guess that's true. It's our accumulative 25th episode, but my 24th being on. So you now have one up on me.
That's right. I now know that if anything happens between us, I can replace you, and it will
No.
all be okay.
Now, Caleb, you had my brother on, and obviously you guys talking about the Solo movie to our vast audience didn't help improve its numbers at all, because this, by the time we're recording right now, Solo movie is kind of in a tailspin.
Yeah, so this movie has dropped 66% since last weekend, which is the highest drop of any Star Wars movie since the original trilogy, including the prequels. This is massive. There's questions now whether or not it's really even going to reach 200 million, 250 million, which is insane.
And I've read some articles saying it won't. And you said 66%. I've seen 65. I've even seen 70%. It's all around that percentile. But you're right. It's definitely insane that this movie is not doing so hot. So I know you and Blaine touched a little bit about this, but it was more just random speculation. You stated why maybe it's not doing good. From your point of view, why is this movie not doing well?
I think it's really two different things. I think the first part of it is probably the biggest piece is all the behind the scenes drama. We didn't really go into it last week because it's such a big can of worms, but the directors got fired and then they
Lord and
them.
Miller. Yep.
And all that stuff. And then I also think that a lot of people just see this as an unnecessary movie.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I would actually add a third too, and this is just coming from me personally, a third and a fourth. The third one for me personally is that they have alienated some of their fan base after The Last Jedi didn't go in a direction a lot of people were hoping for, such as myself. That ranks near the bottom, if not at the bottom, of my Star Wars list, right? And then the second one, I think this is more prominent than that one, would be that it's fairly soon. It's only 5 months since our last Star Wars outing, and there's not enough breathing room between them.
Yeah, I did feel that with this one. I hadn't had an issue with in previous years because there's been a year between them. This one, though, it did feel really, really quick to the other one. And, now we're waiting a year and a half to get another Star Wars film.
That's right. So we'll have to, I guess, see if another Star Wars film will still outperform Solo. I think it will, because it'll be episode 9. And so it'll definitely do a lot better than we are getting from Solo.
Well, another movie that actually is doing a lot better than this, Avengers Infinity War came out a few weeks ago, and there's been some news about its sequel,
a few weeks
4.
ago. This was like a few months ago, man.
Well, a month and a week or so. Yes, hasn't been that long.
Well, it came out in April, and this is June.
It came out at the very end of April, and we're at the very beginning of June.
All right. I'll give it to you. 6 weeks ago.
Okay,
More than a few.
In any case, Avengers 4, there's some news come out that, people have been speculating on the title of that film for quite a while. And one of the popular theories was Avengers Infinity Gauntlet. And supposedly, that was originally going to be the title until Zoe Saldana erroneously called it that in one of the interviews. And so now it's out in the public. So apparently that title has now changed, if it actually ever was that title, but I feel like this is something that could be true.
Now, Caleb, I'll have to say that I would add a huge, massive turd nugget of salt into this tidbit of news. So we got this piece of news from an article, and I followed that link, and then it went into another link, which I followed that link, and this is like a speculation of then a third guy who is talking to one newspaper, who's talking to another newspaper, who states that he's heard it from another guy. So I would give a huge grain of salt. I personally don't think this was ever going to be the title. I think not James Gunn, but the Russo brothers, as well as Kevin Feige, have kind of shot that down. And I think because, maybe it was brought up as a possible title, or maybe it was even called that during filming, but it was never meant to be the actual title of the movie.
Yeah, that's very possible. I mean, it's so hard to tell with things like this, and it's never going to come to fruition. So it's hard for us to know. And ultimately, it's not going to see the light of day. So we're going to get whatever title we do get.
That's right. But Avengers 4 has been doing well. Have you followed what it's been doing at the box office?
Last time I saw, I think it was a week and a half ago, it had hit 1.9 billion. It hadn't hit 2 yet.
Yeah, it's close. It's I want to say 0.94 billion. So it's going to hit 2 billion for sure. It's already passed domestically. I'm pretty sure Jurassic Park or World or whatever that new Jurassic one was, right? It's already exceeded that. It's going to exceed Titanic. Or flip those. It's succeeded once, not going to. It's about to exceed the other, right? But what it actually won't domestically beat is Black Panther, because it's only rung in, I believe, around 500 million domestically, and Black Panther's like upwards of 650, 680. And so many people are speculating that while it will beat some of those others, it won't beat Black Panther domestically.
Sure. Yeah, that's not surprising because I feel like the demographic for Black Panther really was a large American demographic. And the thing about that, though, is, domestically, internationally, really, it's just how much money it makes overall, I think, is how they tend to look at these movies. I'm sure they break it down to domestic and overseas when they're talking about, do we release it here? Do we release it only overseas? But I guess as far as I look at it, I really only look at the international total worldwide gross.
That's really all that matters.
Yeah, so I'm happy that movie's doing well, and I did say it would crack 2 billion, so props.
Got it right. Well, another movie that's in the news is we got a new Wreck-It Ralph 2 trailer, and this Wreck-It Ralph trailer brings in all the Disney princesses at once, as well as Star Wars.
And Marvel.
No, I did not know it brought in Marvel.
So I take it you haven't seen the trailer.
No, not at all.
Seeing trailers.
I just watched Wreck-It Ralph, the original one, maybe 7 months ago, 8 months ago at a camp,
it's so
a summer
good.
camp. I didn't even watch all of it. I watched most of it and then ended up taking my kiddos to bed. So,
did you like it?
Yeah, I thought it was an entertaining film.
Yeah, it's really good. So this trailer, basically, the whole premise of this, the movie's actually called Ralph Breaks the Internet. And so the premise is he and the girl go into the internet and have, I guess, a crazy adventure. And so they do end up meeting up with all the Disney princesses, supposedly voiced by their original actresses where available. And also Star Wars is in there. They've got Stormtroopers in there. There's some Marvel stuff in there. I know Iron Man flies by at one point. There's all kinds of stuff. Google's in there, Snapchat, Twitter, everything that you think would be.
Yeah.
So it looks really good. It looks like a worthy follow-up to the previous movie.
Yeah, I'm not super excited about it, but it'll be a good Redbox movie. For me,
sure.
At least.
But looking back, Zach, the 80s and 90s are coming back in full throttle. There is going to be a new Spawn movie, and they have cast Jamie Foxx in that role.
So he's done with Spider-Man, moving on to another comic book character, I'm taking it?
That is true, only instead of being Blue Lightning this time, he's going to be in that black, gooey suit, and he's not going to talk very much, apparently. This is going to be a movie with no origin that is, in their eyes, hopefully going to be a trilogy.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I have never read a Spawn comic book. I've never watched the Spawn movies. I basically know he's a demon, I think, or has some type of dark magic powers. I'm not really sure, to be honest. Do you know?
Uh-huh. Yeah, so I've never read a comic, but I did watch most of the movie late last year for the very first time. And so I think the origin in that is pretty close. Basically, he's a regular guy that dies. And I think he goes down to hell or something, and somehow he ends up back alive again, but he's cursed with this power.
Yeah, it's kind of vague. I mean...
Yeah, it's kind of Ghost Rider-y as well, I think.
Yeah, it might be kind of interesting. I don't know with Jamie Foxx at the helm. I do have to question that casting choice, but I could see him doing an okay job at it.
Yeah, I like Jamie Foxx as an actor. I think he can do some really great dramatic roles. I mean, Django Unchained was really, really good.
Yes.
And so I think that it's interesting for them to do it without him speaking much. I think that will actually make it better. It's supposed to be more like a horror movie. I think it's supposed to be a hard R rating. The thing that I'm not sure about is Todd McFarlane, the creator of Spawn, is writing and directing the movie.
Yeah, which is really interesting. You don't see that a lot, right? Like the creator of a character actually being that heavily involved. I mean, the most heavily involved I can assume might be like not J.R.R. Tolkien.
Oh, no, he was long gone.
He was long gone. Rowling with the Harry Potter series. She was pretty heavily involved, but she wasn't like directing it.
Yeah, I just, to my knowledge, the only thing he's directed is like some music videos from a decade plus ago.
No.
So and he's not known for his restraint. So I have doubts. But something I am or was looking forward to, Zach, was a new Crow movie. Have you seen the Crow movie?
So I have not seen this movie. I've heard rumors about it, that they've tried to relaunch it or they were going to refilm it. I don't really care. I'm assuming it's like a comic book movie or a superhero movie. All I really know about it is that the main character, Brandon Lee, he actually died filming the movie. And it was pretty horrific. And I know his death scene like took place during a in-scene death scene. And so like he was walking into the building, he was carrying groceries, and then a mob boss or his enemy basically shot him with a revolver, which would have been a pretty cool scene. Unfortunately, I mean, I don't know who the character was. It could be a friend. Who knows? All I know is that unfortunately in the scene, there was in the prop gun it wasn't a fake bullet, but it was something that got lodged into the prop gun. And so when it was fired, a piece of that shrapnel actually hit him and ended up killing him later.
To my understanding, it was an actual real bullet instead of a blank that was in the gun.
Oh, okay.
I could be wrong about that. Don't quote me on that. But yes, he did die during filming. It was in this massive shootout scene. It's quite tragic, but the movie is amazing. It is a little bit dated because it's very gothy, but it is definitely worth a watch. It might be based on a comic book. I'm not really sure, but it's also sort of like Ghost Rider. He's like the spirit of vengeance. The movie starts, the main character dies, and he comes back from the dead as this crow type character. There's actually 2 or 3 sequels. I've never seen those. I've heard that they're garbage, but I was looking forward to what a new iteration of the character could be.
With Jason Momoa.
Yeah, Jason Momoa. Aquaman was supposed to be the Crow.
Yep.
And this movie has gone through several people. I think Matthew McConaughey was maybe at one point attached to maybe do this. But unfortunately, that project has folded in on itself because of financial and creative issues between the people that are financing it and the people that they're partnered with. So we're never going to get that movie.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Sad.
Sad, but, you know, I mean, I never watched the original, so it doesn't impact me, Caleb. I'm like, oh, okay.
Okay. Well, something else that you never watch and really don't care about, more Dragon Ball news. So I'm sure you're aware in Dragon Ball, Zach, that we have Super Saiyan, where they get golden hair, right?
You mean like the power levels over 9,000?
Well, that was pre-Super Saiyan, but yes.
Wait, so what happens when he gets power levels over 9,000 and then he goes Super Saiyan?
Well, when you go Super Saiyan, your power level goes up, so it's already above 9,000.
So what if you add 9,000 on top of your power levels? Then what happens?
Probably insignificant at that point. But so did you know Super Saiyans have like levels, like there's Super Saiyan 1, 2, 3?
I know nothing of Dragon Ball. I know that they have anime hair. I know that one of them's a little kid and he's perverted towards another female character. And I know there's a alien with a antenna on his head and he's bald and he's a green turd looking character. That's really all I know about.
All right,
Dragon
Zach,
Ball.
we're going to have some serious discussions about your misconceptions of Dragon Ball. But basically, the reason I bring this up is, there was a series in the 90s called Dragon Ball GT where Goku, the main character, goes to Super Saiyan 4. That was the highest power that you could attain until the series that they launched recently.
Pause. You said there was only 3 levels.
Well, there were 3 levels in the original series. They had the sequel series, Dragon Ball GT, where he goes to 4.
So you're telling me the creators all sat around a room and went, what's the best thing we have? And one of them went, guys, what if there was a Super Saiyan 4? And they all went, whoa! And then they based a whole season off of it?
Well, look, Zach, You don't understand, but it's a big deal, right?
No,
it's
I'm
also,
sure. I shouldn't be knocking it. Yeah, no, go
it's
for
also
it.
super controversial, so...
Oh, is it? Okay, I should have
yeah.
stepped into that. I opened up a can of worms. Okay.
But basically, what happened is there was a rumor that there was going to be another series after that called Dragon Ball AF. It does not stand for what you think it stands for.
I was just going to say, wait.
No, it actually... that was a rumor. It never was ever true, so
okay,
we don't actually know what those actually stand for. But that thing has exploded into its basically own mini franchise within Dragon Ball, but it's all fanfic, right? But there are these fans that have carried it on. And so in that, Goku ends up going, I think, up to Super Saiyan 10, something ridiculous. But there is a fan that has actually animated a scene where Goku goes Super Saiyan 5. And this is amazing. It's like 2 minutes long. If I didn't know better, I would think that this was real and came from the TV show. It is beautiful. It looks great. I highly recommend anybody that's a Dragon Ball fan to go out and find the Super Saiyan 5 transformation.
All right. And for the rest of you, you can nod.
Read up on your Dragon Ball and don't listen to Zach.
That's right. Well, moving on from movie news, we have to jump into TV news, Caleb. And something huge that has happened over this past week, it has to do with The Walking Dead, and specifically two major characters on The Walking Dead. So Andrew Lincoln and Laura Cohen have both reported that they are leaving The Walking Dead. So if you don't follow that show, you will know that, or you wouldn't know that Laura Cohen plays Maggie and Andrew Lincoln
plays Rick, the main character, more or less, of the series that we've been following for, goodness, it's going to be 9 years next season.
They're both exiting. I mean, they're both going to be on the ninth season, but they both will only be in 6 episodes of the 9th season, and then they're out. They're gone, which is surprising because that is the show's lead, and then that's another pretty big supporting character as well. And if you aren't really following The Walking Dead, they recently had a death of another major character. I'm not going to state who it was, but that was pretty big. And so when you look, okay, who could take over Andrew Lincoln's role here to lead the group? Well, the character that just died probably could have, possibly Maggie, Laura Cohen could have, and there's nobody really left that could take this role, except possibly Norman Reedus.
That's right. Daryl, fan favorite character. As far as I know, he is maybe one of the only original cast members left at this point, especially once Rick leaves. And so for me, I think that would actually be a really strong candidate. I just don't know how well he would work as the lead, because I feel like he probably works better as a supporting character.
He does, and the problem with Daryl is that he isn't a strong lead, right? He's more of that supporting character, more he goes off by himself, he runs, he guns. He doesn't talk a lot, in fact, he grunts, but that's his character, so I can't see him taking over as the leader, so this possibly could be the last season, or they could try to reboot it with season 10, and I mean, their ratings have been going down, their viewership has been going down, so my assumption is if they try a season 10, that will for sure be the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, because I know their viewership has gone down a lot, but it is still really, really high. So I don't know, I've seen shows that are canceled just because their ratings were declining, even though they were really, really high compared to everything else that was on TV.
I mean, they could keep stretching this out season over season, and then pretty soon it would become The Walking Dead series. Got him!
Moving on. Another TV show, Legion, has just gotten renewed for season 3. Have you seen Legion yet, Zach?
You know, Caleb, there's just so many shows. I have so little time. I've heard that out of all the
Zach,
superhero shows
just
out
stop,
there,
just stop right there.
Legion
just stop.
Legion's one of the good ones, right? And it's Foxx has actually done a superb job on it. I just haven't gotten around to watching it.
Yeah, so you've talked about how something has to be great for you to watch it. This is phenomenal. This show is amazing. I haven't caught season 2 yet, but season 1 is it's so good. Don't try to put it in the continuity of any of the movies or anything, because it probably won't make any sense. But given as its own self-contained story, great. Everybody needs to go check that out.
And I mean, it's part of the X-Men universe, so you can't really take continuity seriously at all. Let's just be honest here, Caleb.
Very true. Well, speaking of continuity, a movie that we got a year or two ago that we don't know if the future of it's going to be continuing is Power Rangers. You guys might know Hasbro bought Power Rangers, the brand, from Saban.
And then proceeded to make a incredibly terrible movie that got a lot of negative reviews.
Well, no,
well at all.
No. Don't confuse them, Zach. Hasbro didn't make that movie. That was Saban that made the movie.
No, that's what I'm saying is Saban bought Power Rangers from Hasbro and then made
No. You've got this all wrong. Saban has had Power Rangers for the past 20 years.
Got it. Okay. I got this
They made
all
the movie.
Wrong.
And then they just now, like in the past week or two, sold, well, actually, I guess it was the past couple months, they sold Power Rangers to Hasbro. So now Hasbro has it. They're the same people that have Transformers and G.I. Joe.
I was just going to say, are we going to see a mega crossover of G.I. Joe, Transformers, and Power Rangers all fighting a Super Saiyan 5 Goku?
Probably not the Goku, but I actually could really see them doing that. I think they're going to do a Transformers reboot soon. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they brought all those in, especially since Hasbro is saying that they felt that the brand was under-leveraged, undervalued, and specifically called out doing new toys, games, and movies.
And to film this, they will be bringing back Michael Bay, because if Hasbro gets one thing right, they get the best director to film their movies. So obviously, they are very committed.
Well, Zach, you weren't around last week to hear, but they removed that new Transformers movie. So I think Bay is gone from that.
Took them 20 years, but finally.
Yeah, thank goodness.
Let's wash our hands clean.
Well, now, guys, this is an episode about video games. We have a lot of video game news, so we're going to try to get through these relatively quickly for the most part. The first one up is James Marsden, not Paul Rudd, as was originally reported. James Marsden is in talks or potentially signed on to be in a live-action Sonic the Hedgehog movie. This is not the voice for Sonic, but potentially the human lead in the film.
Could be interesting. I'm more interested to see what happens with Detective Pikachu, to be honest.
I am right there with you. I don't know if a Sonic the Hedgehog live-action movie could work. I feel that the time of mixing creatures like that, like they did with the Smurfs with live action, is kind of past. I don't know. This is supposed to come out in November of next year, so it has to be starting soon. So I guess we'll find out. We should have a trailer by, I don't know, January, you think?
Yeah, well, we can report on how bad it looks.
Sure.
Well, in other news, we are getting into some spoilerish territory of E3. And video games that are being released. So a while ago, we reported that Walmart in Canada had released a bunch of video games, and we went through some of those and said, well, this could be true, this couldn't be true. But one of those that turned out to sort of be true was a new Fallout game, and this Fallout game is Fallout 76. So this was kind of leaked, and then they went ahead and announced it, and this isn't the announcement that you or I want, to be honest. This is not going to be a single player game. This is not going to be like any of the other Fallout games like Fallout 4. This is going to be an online MMO. This is going to be like Knights of the Old Republic MMO. This is going to be like Neverwinter. This is going to be like...
Yeah. Well, that's the rumor, is that it's an online survival RPG, but this isn't actually confirmed yet. They're supposed to talk more about this at E3, so we'll get some more solid details. But that right now is the prevailing rumor and theory of what it's going to be.
How the mighty have fallen. This is very disappointing if that's true. It's not the game any of us want. It's the game that the 13-year-olds will buy. It's the game that the people who watch Dragon Ball will buy, but not the rest of us.
Hey, watch it. Yeah, I don't know. I've never really played any of the Fallout, so I'm not opposed. But again, I'm not a fan of the series, so...
Well, Caleb, another leak that turned out to be true was an Assassin's Creed game. And we kind of talked about this and we called this out. And the Assassin's Creed game has already been announced. It's Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and it will take place in ancient Greece. So I'm pretty pumped for this. That's really all we know. There's some other rumors, which we don't know is to be true, but apparently it could have a ton of customization. Another rumor is that there will be dialogue boxes.
Yep.
So a choose your own dialogue option in the game. So it'll definitely be interesting.
Yeah. So the release, well, if I can speak correctly,
yeah,
the trailer for this had a Spartan helmet. So I guess Sparta might be in it. I also think it's weird that it's called Odyssey because Mario just went on an Odyssey. I would have thought they would separate themselves from that, but
sure. I'm assuming it's a play off of the Iliad and Odyssey.
Oh, Zach, that makes too much sense. Well, something, Zach, that I do know that you're a fan of is the game Evolve, 2K's Evolve specifically. I've seen you play it. I know you're a fan. They are actually going to shut down the dedicated servers for that game in September. I just saw this right before we started recording. So that means that those elements of the game are going to be no longer available, but it still will be retaining the Legacy Evolve, which is the original version, the peer-to-peer matchmaking, quick play, custom games, and all single-player options.
Which, I mean, none of this will survive, right? Because it's an online-only player game. Caleb, when you were here, I jumped on it, I believe, just to show you what it was like. I love the idea behind this game. It didn't do well at all. Matchmaking now takes like 20 to 30 minutes just to find a game anyways, yeah. Right? And I will give them props because the game company tried to do was make it free to play and switch what they were doing to get a bigger fan base, and that didn't work. Which kind of saddens me. This was a fun game just to play off and on whenever, but like any other major games that use online as their only kind of platform, if people move on, the game's dead.
Yep, that's true. A couple weeks ago, Zach, we missed a trailer that came out for Battlefield 5, Battlefield V. I'm not sure if that's been confirmed which one it is, but it was the announcement trailer.
Yeah, so we didn't really miss it. You and Blaine didn't cover it last week, so it was only, I believe, a week and a half ago. It is Battlefield 5, but instead of the number 5, it's a V. And so it is now set in World War II. It's going to obviously be following in the path of Call of Duty. They just released a World War I game, so now it's World War II. But Caleb, this got kind of a lot of backlash. I don't know, did you hear about any of the backlash it received?
I heard a little bit about it, but I kind of think it's unfounded.
So some of the backlash they received is, if you watch the trailer, it's a group of 4 people, and it's crazy and insane, right? And so there's a female in this group of kind of 4. Another guy kind of looks Irish and has his face painted. They're sliding down hills, firing like machine guns. I believe the woman has a robo prosthetic arm. And so basically the backlash they got was realism. As people said, Battlefield games have been built on realism, and this is not real at all. And so the developers have pushed back and said, we actually prioritized fun over realism any day. And so this has kind of been fairly divisive, I would say, the community. Most people state they don't have a problem with it. They'd rather have fun than realism. I'm probably on the other end. I would rather have more realism. And it's not the fact that there's a woman on it. There'll be a female on the front cover. I think that's pretty cool. Battlefield released I'm trying to think of the name. It was in the Name of the Tsar. And it was a kind of expansion for their World War I game, right? Battlefield 1. Mm-hmm. And that had a lead female because it was about this group of females in Russia. And I thought that was awesome, right? And so it's not that. It's more different realism aspects. Like, they're going to allow you to customize your character and attach robotic prosthetic arms. But this was World War II, so they had nothing like that at all. I don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that complaint. I don't think that the complaints about women or other nationalities being in it are founded because there's a lot of games that do this, right? They take a historic period and they put people there that weren't necessarily there, and that's not a bad thing. And games have, for the most part, never been historically accurate. Even the games that are historically accurate aren't historically accurate, if you know what I mean. There's always things that they put in there to make it more inclusive or to make it more fun. And so I'm kind of on the side of make it more fun. I've never really played a Battlefield game, so I'm kind of detached from this argument. But for me, so long as it plays well, it doesn't really matter.
That's a valid point, Caleb. And, for the most part, I would agree. Although I want some realism in the games. because it has that Battlefield tag to it, right? If I don't want realism, I'll go to Call of Duty and I'll use my jetpack to 360 scope a noob from across the map and laugh at him as I teabag and tell him that I'm going to go. I'll just cut it. I'll cut it there.
Okay. Good
But
call.
in other news, Caleb, we covered Fortnite 2 weeks ago, and it is back in the news because Epic Games has recently announced that they will be starting competitive play. And in this competitive play, they are gifting, or they're promising $100 million in prize pool money for the first year of competition, which will take place in the 2018 and 19 season. And Caleb, I don't know if you follow eSports at all, but this is massive. So far, the largest kind of company or game that has put out that money was Dota 2, and that put out $38 million. So this is almost tripling that.
Wow. So I don't really follow esports. I know it exists and I watch it occasionally, but I had no idea how big that is. I think that's good though. I mean, esports has really been taking a hold in the past, 5 years especially. And so I think it's going to take someone like this to come in with a lot of money to really help bring other people in and make esports more mainstream.
And I think it's just going to continue to become more mainstream. The trajectory of esports is that more and more people are leaning towards that and they're watching that. And in 10, 20 years, esports will be an extremely mainstream sport. And as a little tidbit on Fortnite, Caleb, it is also coming to the Wii. I was going to say Wii U, which that's a little outdated. The Nintendo Switch. So it is coming to the Nintendo Switch, but there are bigger games coming to the Nintendo Switch, correct?
There are, but real quick before we get to that, I wanted to mention a very small piece of news, but I think it's worth mentioning specifically because our whole first, 20 episodes were Marvel-based. Zach, as you might know, Square Enix is making an Avengers game, and there have been some rumors, so do take this with a grain of salt, that this Avengers game is actually a rebooted Avengers Ultimate Alliance.
So I don't buy those rumors at all. I can't see them just rebooting a game. That's not what Square Enix does. I can see it
Final Fantasy, each game is basically a reboot. So
I mean, true, but it's also like a separate storyline.
Yeah, but I think that they would totally do this, especially like what DICE did with Battlefront. They rebooted the whole thing. It's kind of that same era of game. I think they take something that people know that they like, that has brand appeal, Ultimate Alliance, and they bring it into the modern era, but they put their own twist on it.
Sure. I mean, I could see it having Ultimate Alliance-esque gameplay. I can see you joining maybe up with a group of heroes to accomplish a task. I can't see them calling it Ultimate Alliance. I can't see it following the storyline of Ultimate Alliance. I could maybe see just that idea come to fruition, but nothing more.
And that's kind of what it is. If this rumor does turn out to be true, I would not be surprised if it was called Ultimate Alliance, but definitely not the story or anything like that. And different gameplay as well, but taking those core ideas. But moving on, Zach, yes, the new Switch games, big news, new Pokemon for the Switch. Now, we knew this was going to happen, but we didn't realize that they had multiple games in development for the Switch.
Yeah, Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, unless those are the same.
So, kind of. So, the games that we thought they were making were the new mainline Generation 8 games. They are still making those, but those are not going to come out until next year. These are kind of an oddball in the series because they are sort of mainline, but they're not part of a generation per se. These are basically remakes of the original Pokemon Yellow version, with brand new updated graphics, new types of things you can do. And it's, just like all the other ones, like Pokemon Red and Blue, there's two different versions. Probably the only differences are going to be the Pokemon you can catch.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So the big difference with this is the influence of Pokemon Go. Did you played Pokemon Go, right? We played together.
I did, yes. And so now they're coming out with a Pokeball that you can hold.
Yeah, so that's part of it. It's a peripheral that you can use while you're playing the game, and it's also a controller. But the bigger part is the catching mechanics in the game are actually basically the exact same thing as Pokemon Go. As far as I know, that's the only thing that's like Pokemon Go in the game. which on paper I felt sounds stupid. Watching it, my inner child was crying out with joy. I'm like, look, you swing the remote like you're throwing a Pokeball.
I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's cool, and I will definitely be getting that Pokeball because it's awesome.
And it's supposed to vibrate and move kind of like a Pokeball, make sounds like one.
Yeah, and it's going to light up when you catch them like it does in the games. And you can load your Pokemon onto it and take it with you if you wanted to do that. And apparently it'll make noises like whatever Pokemon you've put in it. So that's pretty cool. Some other things that are in it is you're going to be able to do couch co-op mode in it, which is a pretty big deal. That's never been in a Pokemon game before. You will also be able to ride Pokemon, which has been in other games, but it looks more realistic in this one. It looks like the Pokemon are going to be actual size. And then it's also coming out in November of this year.
That's right, but that's not the only Pokemon news. There's been a new game, Pokemon Quest, that has come out. This is a free-to-play game. It's for the Nintendo Switch, as well as Android and iOS.
Is it on iOS? Because I had a friend look it up, and they couldn't find it.
It's been announced. I'm pretty sure it's out right now on Nintendo Switch, and it will be launched in iOS and Android. It's not out yet, but they are planning to launch it.
Yeah, so this game has kind of gotten lost in the news of the other two, because this one's very different. It is out on the Switch. I actually downloaded this. We have a Switch, and I played it for a little bit. It's very interesting. The art style is kind of like Lego crossed with Minecraft.
Super cartoony.
Yeah, super blocky. It's supposed to be a game that people that aren't serious gamers can jump in and play. Mm-hmm. And I think it totally holds true to that. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, and it's not your typical Pokemon game either. It's not your typical role-playing, grinding to get better Pokemon. It's different.
Yeah, so basically the premise is you go to an island and you can attract new Pokemon to your camp by cooking different foods. Those Pokemon you can then add to your party. You only have 3 in your party. And the main gameplay mechanic is you go on these things called quests, where the Pokemon basically are plopped into an area and they automatically find enemy Pokemon and fight them. And then each one has 2 different moves, and you can activate those moves on your own to help beat the other Pokemon. And then they level up and get stronger, kind of like other games.
So if you have a Nintendo Switch, go ahead, log on, download it, and give it a spin.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend checking it out. I just don't think it's going to be a long-term game that you play.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, Caleb, for the last 20 minutes, we have something rather special to talk about, and that is the development, the implementation, the genderfication, the qualification. Well, Caleb, with our last 20 minutes left, we have consoles to talk about.
That's right. Specifically, the best consoles, or well, not the best consoles, our best consoles, the consoles we think are best, and or potentially that influenced us the most.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So, Zach, do you want to kick us off?
Well, yeah. So, I was giving this some thought, Caleb, and if you're listening to this right now, I would say this. What is your most influential console, right? Or what do you see as the best console out there? And what you will probably state is the console that you grew up with, right? And so if you were in the era of N64s, you will see that as one of the most influential consoles. If you grew up possibly when we did, maybe 90s or early 2000s, you will most likely say the PlayStation 2, the Xbox, or possibly the GameCube. And then if you're a rather young listener, you might say something to the extent of the 360, possibly Xbox One or PlayStation 4, maybe the Wii U or the Wii just in general. And, it can change as well. So, we're not talking about computers here, more so consoles. And Caleb, I would say we probably both have the same one in GameCube.
Yes. So, obviously, like you said, the one you grow up with does have a special place in your heart because it's kind of formative. And so that is one of the consoles that I think is best. And I know I'm biased because of that, but I also think that the GameCube just was a really, really great console. It wasn't the same as the Xbox or the PS2, but it had the Nintendo touch.
Yeah, they had a lot of really good games out for it. I remember going to Circuit City and being super excited to get it and play Rogue Squadron on this game on the system, and it was just a very different system.
Wait, You didn't get yours at Circuit City. You got yours for Christmas.
No, I did, but I went to Circuit City and played it, which is no longer around anymore because they all went bankrupt.
Rip.
Yeah, right. So I mean, I think it was important for us and informative for us because it was around for our early years. Looking back, I think the better console was probably the PS2. It kind of dominated that era. I would say in second place would actually then come the Xbox, and then GameCube. I'm pretty sure rounds out the bottom of that tier when you just look at sales, number of units.
Yeah, when you look at it that way, PS2 definitely dominated. It was just too prevalent. There was too much of it. But I don't think that means the GameCube was bad by any means. There are some generations that do have a black sheep. I don't think that's this one, though. I mean, when I talk to people, even people that aren't my age, they look at the GameCube very fondly. And part of that is because of, like you said, Star Wars Rogue Squadron, which was great. And a
Super Smash. I think that's huge. Yep, Mario
that's what
Kart.
I was going to say. Yep. Like, part of me when I was trying to come up with these is, what games would I want to go play now? Like, what games have aged really well and are still great? And Super Smash Melee is amazing. In fact, I think it is still my favorite Smash game because the new ones just feel different.
Yeah, that's true. This game is great. I mean, when you were in college or if you're still in college and you don't game with your buddies and play Super Smash Bros. Melee, I don't know what's going on, right? Because I know thinking back 4 years ago, I mean, even in dorm rooms, people would get together and play Super Smash Bros. Like, you just played Super Smash together.
And the tournaments that they have are typically still on Melee because it has some of the most depth in terms of different pro techniques that you can do in it.
Now, while we did pick up some of those really cool games, right, the exclusively Nintendo games, I would say I missed out on a couple games I could only play at friends' house, right? On one hand, you had Halo, which was amazing on the Xbox. Now, you could get this on the PC as well, but this was, multiplayer on Xbox. It felt different, I feel like. And on the other hand, PlayStation 2, can we talk about Tony Hawk Pro Skater?
Yes, that was it. And I think they did come out with that on the GameCube at one point.
They did, but it was different. I don't think the graphics were up to par.
Yeah.
It just very different.
I spent hours playing Pro Skater with my friends.
Yes, it's such a good game.
Yeah, but, we also have other games on the GameCube that I actually really haven't played that are held in very high regard, such as Wind Waker, Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, which is, I think, usually rated as, like, the #1 game on that console.
Is it, or is it Twilight Princess? Or is it Smash Bros?
Twilight Princess came out as well, but it is not held anywhere near as high regard as Wind Waker.
That's true, yep.
Yeah. So, those games are really good. I do think that there is something to be said that most of the good games on the GameCube were Nintendo games.
That's true. That's very true.
And so I do think that you're right. There were a lot of games we missed out, specifically Halo, but I mean, there's too many to count on PS2.
Now, Caleb, something that would be interesting to talk about is the current console war, right? So Nintendo, I would say, has probably taken the back burner. I mean, they had the N64, which is great. The GameCube was decent. The Wii was phenomenal, right? That just outpaced everybody. And then I would say, have distinctively fallen behind with the Wii U. And even Nintendo Switch was good and was different, but I don't think they have nearly caught up at all to Sony or to Microsoft, right? And so the current kind of standing, and it's a long-standing debate, is are you Xbox or PlayStation, right? And right now the current systems would be the Xbox One or the PlayStation 4. Well, Xbox One X, sorry.
Right. It's interesting that you say that about Nintendo, and you're completely right. The Wii U really kind of sunk that company for a while. The Switch actually is very successful. I think it might have the biggest install base, actually. It has done very well in my eyes and the eyes of the people I talk to. And even I listen to a video game podcast. Xbox is the one that's way far behind because there's no reason to buy it. There's no exclusives to it. They keep destroying their UI every 3 months and making it harder and harder. While the Switch has been killing it with the games that they've been coming out on, which I would agree with personally.
Sure, I'm just talking about Nintendo in general, right? If you look at sales, the Switch will never catch up to Xbox or PlayStation, right? While, yeah, their sales have been up, I believe they have been outselling PlayStation and Xbox, but that's because the Switch has come out recently, and Xbox One and PlayStation 4 were launched 2, 3, dare I say, was it 4 years ago? It was a while ago, right? And so the Switch and Nintendo, just in general as a company, will not outpace Microsoft or Sony, in my opinion.
I actually think your numbers are wrong. It might not have actually outsold them at this point, but I know in terms of lifetime sales, it is doing very well. It is doing much better than the Xbox did when it was launched. In terms of PlayStation, I'm not sure, but I think in a lot of people's eyes at this point, it's Switch and PlayStation in terms of the two successful, but you are right. You do still have that debate, Xbox or PS4. At work, I sit in an office with like 8 other guys. Some of them are Xbox and some of them are PlayStation. We have this debate all the time. For me personally, I never had a PlayStation until very, very recently. I now have a PS4, specifically the Pro. And it was interesting that you led into this saying, typically we choose the ones from our childhood as our favorite. The PS4 is on my list of best consoles.
So why would you say that?
For me, the experiences I've had on the PS4 have been, I don't want to say groundbreaking, but they have been incredible. I think that the PS4, from a base level, it just has features that the other consoles either don't have or it does them better. Like share play, remote play, which I think are great. The games are really what it comes down to, though, and they're exclusive to the console. For example, I had never played a Final Fantasy game before. I bought Final Fantasy 15. It moved me to tears. It is a phenomenal game. Some people don't like it. I understand that. But there are several games that have just moved me to such a great degree. That one was one. I played the original Kingdom Hearts on it for the first time. Phenomenal. Nier Automata is amazing. Everyone should play that game.
And I think when you look at the systems, I mean, I would agree. So I've always seen Nintendo as below Sony and Microsoft, and whether what you say or not, I recently saw the figures that in this past Christmas, I believe Microsoft and Sony, while Nintendo outsold it on consoles, they still outpaced after Christmas. Does that make sense? So it was December, Nintendo killed it with their consoles, but it was after Xbox and PlayStation were back on top. However, if you look at them, I'll admit that I think PlayStation's doing a lot better of a job right now than Xbox. I think Xbox needs to catch up specifically on their specialty games that they've kind of been falling behind on. So if you look at the exclusives for Xbox, you have Gears of War, you have Halo, right? You have some pretty good games and exclusives, but they've kind of fallen behind PlayStation in my regard, where you have Spider-Man, you have God of War, you have some of these other exclusives. And so in reality, I think when you look at the consoles, they pretty much stack side by side. I don't think there's little bits here and there that can push one person to one or the other. I don't think they outpace each other in one way or the other. I just think, where would you like to line up on your exclusives, right? So if you grew up playing Halo, you're going to get an Xbox. If you grew up playing God of War, you're going to get a PlayStation 4. And maybe you want to switch between the two. I know that you have, but I think you're more in the minority than the majority, that once you stick with a console, you're pretty much with that console for life.
I did start with an Xbox One, and I did move to a PS4. And I do think that, for the most part, they have a lot of the same features. And it really does come down to the exclusives. I agree with that. PlayStation has so many more exclusives, though. Even Xbox, there's a guy in my office who is kind of almost wanting an excuse to get an Xbox, but because there just aren't that many exclusives for it. Really what it has, you said it, Halo and Gears of War. But I know those games don't come out with new games that often. And if you're going to get a console that has to span the lifetime of the generation, you have way more options with PlayStation. Because aside from those few, most games are actually cross-platform now.
Now, do you know the number of exclusives that each system holds?
Numbers? No, I do not know. I do know, though, that at least from a public perception standpoint and from a like AAA game standpoint, PlayStation seems to get more consistently than the Xbox does.
You know, and I would agree with you on that. I mean, I just looked it up. Xbox right now only has 146 exclusives. PlayStation has 393. And I think when you look at what's big, I think PlayStation gets the bigger ones. If you look at Battlefront, that was all PlayStation, right? PlayStation got, I mean, it wasn't exclusive to it, but it gets games where you get exclusive content if you get it on that system, right?
Right.
And I think Xbox has kind of fallen behind. So, you know, I would disagree with you. You said it only has a couple. I think there are more. Gears of War and Halo are the only ones that come to my mind. PlayStation, God of War, and Spider-Man are the only ones that come to my mind that would be worth getting it just for the PlayStation. And I think they both have a decent number. I just think that PlayStation has outpaced Xbox, and Microsoft really needs to get back into the game.
Yeah, and I think another thing that really plays into it, and this is just part of my perception, so it's probably not completely true. I feel like the first-person shooter genre has taken over games in a very bad way. We have a lot of basically the same games over and over. And I feel that most of those end up on the Xbox. And you don't have a whole lot of variety on the Xbox when it comes to games. I've gone to the store and looked before and tried to find something different. And most of them, I feel like, are first-person shooters. Where I feel like if you go over to the PlayStation, you do have some of those. But you also have a lot of other things. You have Western RPGs, you have JRPGs, you have some platformers, which are a little bit harder to find. You have to dig more for those. But also, one thing that I think makes a PS4 so great is they are re-releasing games consistently from older consoles, from the PS2, from the PS3. So if you're like me, where you miss those consoles, you can catch up on those games. And not only do you have the great PS4 games, you have the great PS2 and PS3 games.
Sure, and you know, I would say that the games that are first-person shooter have taken over just the genre and everything in general, right? Now, I like that. I love first-person shooter games, so I don't care as much about it. But I wouldn't agree with you necessarily about the fact that Xbox just has first-person shooters. Look at Cuphead, right? That was a great. I'm pretty sure it was an exclusive game to Xbox. Am I right about that?
I'm not sure. It might be.
Okay, you have Sea of Thieves, which I know either gets exclusive content, if not exclusive itself. You got a lot of sport games that you can play on the Xbox too. So I wouldn't say it's just shooting games. I think that's more just video games in general tend to go towards that genre because it's easy to sell, easy to make money, and you get a lot of return. Well,
I think I meant exclusive games. Like most of those sports games are cross-platform. And you're right. It's not only first-person shooters. I don't mean that by any stretch, but I guess the big games that you think of are a lot of first-person shooters on both of them, to be fair. But I think a little bit more on Xbox. And again, this comes down to personal preference. But for me, I was an Xbox guy. I had a 360. I bought a One, and I made the jump because I just wasn't happy with what I had.
All right, so if you are not happy with what you have and you watch Dragon Ball, then follow in Caleb's footsteps.
You don't have to watch Dragon Ball.
All right, Caleb, so quickly, if you want to make that switch and get PS4, what are your top 3 games you would get right now? Go.
Okay, I would get Nier Automata. I would get one of the Final Fantasies, either 10 or 15. And I would get the very first Kingdom Hearts.
All right. I wouldn't get any of those. I would get, if looking at just from an outside perspective, because I don't play it, I would get God of War. I would get the new Spider-Man game that's coming out. And I'd probably get a Final Fantasy game as well.
Okay. And Spider-Man would probably be on my list too.
That's right. If you are maybe checking out Xbox for the first time, I would definitely go ahead and grab a Halo game. You have to grab that. I would get the Gears of War Ultimate Collection just to try out Gears of War. And then I would go ahead and pick up Fortnite just because I'm a fan. That's not an exclusive. If you're looking for exclusive, maybe go ahead and pick up Cuphead. I'm hesitant because I don't know if that's an exclusive or not.
How about Mass Effect? That's the 360, but
I'm Googling right now. Cuphead PS4. Nope. Yeah, so it is only on Yeah. And then I would go ahead and get Cuphead, right? Because if you want a retro game that's hard, that would be a great game to get.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Well, Caleb, I think that wraps us up with the news and our console talk. But you know who definitely goes to Super Saiyan 5 every time he makes music?
Taylor Poole.
Taylor Poole. Guys, I just want to give a quick shout out to Taylor Poole. He is the Mozart of our age. He is the Goku of reality. He is the Taylor of Pools, all right? He's working on some new music. He's been staying up day and night composing this 6th symphony for us. It is amazing what he is doing. So yeah, go ahead and check him out at taylorpoolemusic.com.
And if you're listening to this episode, then you do like video games, you should check out our friends CNC Power Hour over on Twitch, where they stream both video games and Magic the Gathering throughout the week.
That's right, and they're supposed to be giving us a shout out. We actually don't know if they are, so we'd love it if you go check them out and just make sure, report back to us, and let them know what's going on. Give them some love, give them some hate if they're not. Do both.
And also, please do check out our website. It's the best way to share our show with a new person. Or an old person.
Or no. We don't discriminate here, Caleb. Well, thanks for listening to 'Cause We're Nerds. We'd love to hear your comments or feedback at cuzwerenerds@gmail.com. That's cuzwerenerds@gmail.com. You could leave us a review on Facebook or on iTunes. As always, you can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, as we are on most major social networking and podcasting sites. Well, join us next week as we probably talk about some E3, some more important news, and as always, stay nerdy. MMO, basically. So it's going to be like, what's that MMO for that one game?
Well, Zach, let me tell you.
Yeah.